"He should be grateful you even brought him," my mom said, her voice loud enough for everyone in the kitchen to hear. I stood frozen in the doorway between the dining room and the garage, watching my 6-year-old son Jacob sit on an overturned crate near the trash can. He had a paper plate balanced on his knees, eating the leftovers my sister had scraped together for him. The garage smelled like oil and mildew, and the single bulb hanging from the ceiling barely lit the space. Jacob's little legs dangled, his sneakers scuffed and worn, and he ate quietly, like he was trying not to be noticed. My sister Vanessa leaned against the counter, arms crossed, a smirk pulling at her lips. "Some kids just aren't meant for better, Naomi. You know how it is." I said nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Jacob and leave right then. But I stayed silent, swallowing the rage building in my chest. This was Thanksgiving dinner at my childhood home in Louisville, Kentucky, and my family had decided my son did not deserve to eat at the table with everyone else. My name is Naomi. I am 32 years old, and I have spent most of my adult life trying to prove I was worth something to my family. I grew up in that house on Maple Grove Lane, a modest 2-story with chipped paint and a sagging porch. My parents always favored Vanessa. She was the golden child, the one who married well, the one who had 2 perfect daughters and a husband with a steady income. I was the one who got pregnant at 23, dropped out of college, and raised a son on my own after his father disappeared before Jacob was even born. For years, I worked double shifts as a medical billing specialist at a small clinic, scraping together enough money to keep us fed and housed in a tiny apartment across town. I sent my parents money when they needed it. I helped Vanessa move 3 times. I babysat her daughters without asking for a dime. I showed up to every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, hoping that one day they would see me as more than a disappointment. But standing there that Thanksgiving, watching my son eat in the garage like he was something to be ashamed of, I realized they never would. Jacob looked up at me, his brown eyes wide and uncertain. He did not cry. He did not complain. He just ate his cold mashed potatoes and turkey, and my heart broke into pieces I did not think I could ever put back together. "Mom," I said quietly, turning to face her. She was setting out dessert plates, acting like nothing was wrong. "Why is Jacob in the garage?" She did not even look at me. "Because Vanessa's girls are sitting at the table and there's not enough room. Besides, he's fine. He's got food, doesn't he?" "There's plenty of room," I said, my voice shaking. "You just don't want him there." Vanessa laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Don't be so dramatic, Naomi. It's not like we locked him outside. He's in the garage, he's sheltered, he's fed. What more do you want?" What more did I want? I wanted my son to be treated like a human being. I wanted my family to show him even a fraction of the kindness they showed Vanessa's daughters. I wanted them to stop treating him like he was less than because I was less than. But I did not say any of that. I walked into the garage, sat down on the concrete floor next to Jacob, and ate the rest of my dinner there with him. He looked at me, confused at first, and then he smiled. It was a small, shy smile, but it was enough to remind me why I kept fighting. "You okay, buddy?" I asked, brushing a strand of hair off his forehead. He nodded. "Yeah, Mama, I'm okay." But I was not okay. I was not okay at all. Later that night, after we left, I sat in my car in the driveway of our apartment building and cried. Jacob had fallen asleep in the back seat, his jacket pulled up to his chin. I looked at him in the rearview mirror and made a promise to myself. I promised that I would never let anyone treat him that way again. I promised that I would build a life for us where we did not have to beg for scraps of respect. I did not know how I was going to do it. I did not have a plan. But I knew one thing for certain. I was done accepting crumbs from people who should have loved us. That night marked the beginning of something I did not fully understand yet. It was the moment I stopped trying to earn my family's approval and started focusing on what Jacob and I needed to survive. I did not know it then, but that cold Thanksgiving evening in the garage would become the turning point that changed everything, because a year later, I would walk back into that house. Not as the daughter begging for acceptance, not as the sister asking for kindness, but as the woman who owned their mortgage. And I would make sure they understood exactly what it felt like to lose everything. Growing up, I always believed family meant loyalty. I believed it meant showing up for each other no matter what. My parents taught me that lesson early, though they never seemed to apply it to me. My father worked in construction for 30 years before his knees gave out, and my mother cleaned houses until arthritis made it impossible. They were hardworking people, proud people, and they poured everything they had into keeping that house on Maple Grove Lane. It was not much, but it was theirs. Or at least I thought it was. Vanessa was 5 years older than me, and from the moment I could understand the world, I understood that she was the favorite. She was prettier, smarter, more charming. She married a man named Gregory who worked in sales, and together they built what my parents considered a respectable life. 2 daughters, a nice car, weekend trips to the lake. Vanessa never struggled the way I did. When I got pregnant with Jacob, my parents made it clear I had ruined my life. My mother cried for days. My father stopped speaking to me for weeks. Vanessa told me I was selfish for keeping the baby, that I should have given him up for adoption so I could finish school and make something of myself. But I kept Jacob, and I loved him more than I ever thought I could love anyone. He was quiet and sweet, with a smile that could light up a room. He loved dinosaurs and drawing pictures of rockets. He wanted to be an astronaut when he grew up, and I promised him that one day I would take him to see a real rocket launch. Raising him alone was the hardest thing I ever did. I worked long hours at the clinic, inputting insurance codes and dealing with angry patients on the phone. The pay was not great, but it was steady, and it kept a roof over our heads. I missed his school events sometimes because I could not afford to take time off. I felt guilty every single day for not giving him the life I thought he deserved. Still, I tried to stay close to my family. I thought if I kept showing up, kept helping them, kept proving that I was not the failure they believed I was, they would eventually see me differently. I was wrong. My parents started having financial trouble about 2 years before that Thanksgiving. My father's medical bills piled up after a surgery on his knee, and my mother's income had dried up completely. Vanessa helped them here and there, but she always made a big show of it, reminding everyone how generous she was being. I helped too, quietly. I sent them $200 a month, even though it meant I was eating ramen for dinner and skipping my own doctor's appointments. I never told anyone because I did not want them to think I was looking for praise. I just wanted to help. But my parents did not thank me. They did not even acknowledge it. Instead, they thanked Vanessa every time she gave them $50 or bought them groceries. They talked about how lucky they were to have such a wonderful daughter. I stopped expecting anything from them after a while. I told myself it did not matter. But it did matter. It mattered every time Vanessa's daughters got new toys and Jacob wore hand-me-downs. It mattered every time my mother gushed about Vanessa's perfect life and asked me when I was going to get my act together. It mattered every time I walked into that house and felt like I was invisible. The Thanksgiving incident was not the first time they treated Jacob poorly. It was just the worst. Vanessa's daughters, Chloe and Sophie, were 8 and 10. They were spoiled and loud, the kind of kids who threw tantrums when they did not get their way. My parents adored them. They bought them presents for no reason, took them out for ice cream, let them run wild through the house without consequences. Jacob, on the other hand, was expected to sit quietly in the corner. If he spoke too loud, my mother shushed him. If he touched anything, Vanessa scolded him for being clumsy. They treated him like he was an inconvenience, something to be tolerated rather than loved. I tried to protect him from it. I tried to shield him from their coldness. But he was 6 years old, and he noticed. He asked me once why Grandma did not hug him the way she hugged Chloe and Sophie. I did not have an answer that would not break his heart. After that Thanksgiving, I stopped going to family dinners. I made excuses when my mother called. I told her Jacob was sick or I had to work. She did not push. She did not seem to care. Vanessa called me a few weeks later, asking if I was still mad about the garage thing. She said it like it was nothing, like it was just a silly misunderstanding. "It was not a big deal, Naomi," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're being dramatic. Jacob is fine. Kids don't remember stuff like that." But I remembered. And I knew Jacob would remember too. That phone call was the last time I spoke to Vanessa for months. I stopped answering when she called. I stopped responding to my mother's texts. I pulled away from all of them, and honestly, it felt like relief. For the first time in years, I focused entirely on Jacob and me. I started looking for better job opportunities. I updated my resume. I applied to positions I never thought I was qualified for. And then, 3 months after Thanksgiving, I got a call that changed everything. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in February. I was sitting at my desk at the clinic, staring at a spreadsheet of billing codes, when my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. "Is this Naomi?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "My name is Patricia. I'm calling from Hollowgate Systems. We received your application for the Senior Medical Billing Coordinator position, and we would like to schedule an interview." I almost dropped the phone. Hollowgate Systems was one of the largest healthcare management companies in the region, with offices in Louisville and across 3 other states. I had applied on a whim, not expecting to hear back. The position paid nearly double what I was making at the clinic, with benefits that included health insurance, paid time off, and a retirement plan. "Yes," I said quickly. "Yes, I would love to interview." The interview was scheduled for the following week, and I spent every free moment preparing. I researched the company, practiced answering questions, and bought a new blazer from a discount store. Jacob helped me pick out the color. He said the dark blue one made me look like a superhero. The interview went better than I could have imagined. Patricia and her team asked me about my experience, my approach to problem solving, and how I handled difficult clients. I answered honestly, drawing on years of frustrating phone calls and insurance disputes. I told them about a time I saved a patient thousands of dollars by catching a billing error, and they seemed impressed. 2 days later, Patricia called again. They were offering me the job. I accepted immediately, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe things were going to be okay. The salary was enough to move Jacob and me into a better apartment. It was enough to buy him new clothes and sign him up for the after-school art program he had been asking about. It was enough to stop living paycheck to paycheck. I started the job in March, and within the first month, I realized I was good at it. Really good. I streamlined processes, caught errors that had been costing the company money, and built strong relationships with clients. My supervisor praised my work constantly, and by June, I was promoted to lead coordinator. The raise that came with the promotion was significant. For the first time in my life, I had savings. Real savings. Money I did not have to touch for emergencies, because I could finally afford to handle those emergencies without panic. Jacob thrived too. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with a small balcony where he could draw and watch the birds. He made friends at school. He joined the art program and came home every week with paintings he was proud of. He smiled more. He laughed more. He stopped asking why Grandma did not call. I did not tell my family about the new job. I did not tell them about the promotion, or the raise, or the life Jacob and I were building. They did not ask, so I did not offer. In August, my mother called. It was the first time I had heard from her in months. "Naomi," she said, her voice tight. "I need to talk to you." "What is it?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Your father and I are having some trouble," she said. "The mortgage. We're behind, and the bank is threatening foreclosure. Vanessa's been helping, but it's not enough. We need you to pitch in." I felt a cold, familiar anger settle in my chest. "How much are you behind?" "About 12,000, she said. "We just need a few months to catch up. If you could send us 1,000 or two, it would help." 1,000 or two. As if I had that kind of money lying around. As if I had not already been sending them money for years without so much as a thank you. "I can't help you," I said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "What do you mean you can't help?" "I mean I can't," I said. "I have my own bills. I have Jacob to take care of." "Naomi, this is your childhood home," she said, her voice rising. "Your father and I worked our whole lives to keep this house. You're really going to let us lose it?" "You let my son eat in the garage like he was trash," I said, my voice shaking. "You treated him like he was nothing. You treated me like I was nothing. And now you want my help?" "That's not fair," she said. "You're holding a grudge over something so small." "Small?" I repeated. "You humiliated my son. You humiliated me. And you never apologized. You never even acknowledged it." "Fine," she snapped. "If you're not going to help, then don't. But don't come crying to me when your father and I are on the street." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me wondered if I was being cruel. But the bigger part of me, the part that had watched Jacob eat cold leftovers in a garage, felt nothing but resolve. That night, I started researching the foreclosure process. I wanted to understand what my parents were facing, what their options were. I told myself I was just curious, that I was not planning anything. But deep down, I knew better. I was not just curious. I was calculating. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, a plan was already forming. A plan that would take everything my parents took for granted and turn it into something they could not ignore. I did not know yet how far I would go. But I knew one thing for certain. I was done being the daughter who begged for scraps. I spent the next 2 weeks learning everything I could about foreclosures, mortgages, and real estate auctions. I stayed up late after Jacob went to bed, reading articles and watching videos about how the process worked. I learned that when a property went into foreclosure, it was often sold at auction to the highest bidder. I learned that sometimes those properties sold for far less than their market value. I learned that if you had cash and good credit, you could buy a foreclosed home outright. And I learned that my parents' house, the house on Maple Grove Lane, was scheduled for auction in October. The information was public record. I found it on the county website, listed alongside dozens of other properties facing foreclosure. The starting bid was set at $78,000, which was well below the home's estimated value of $120,000. The auction was set for October 15th at 10 in the morning. I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart pounding. $78,000. It was more money than I had ever imagined having, but it was not impossible. Not anymore. I had been saving aggressively since my promotion. Between my salary, the raise, and the fact that I was finally living within my means, I had managed to put away nearly $30,000. It was not enough to buy the house outright, but it was enough for a down payment if I could secure a loan. The idea felt insane at first. Why would I want to buy my parents' house? Why would I want to tie myself to the place that had caused me so much pain? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Not as a way to reconnect with my family, but as a way to prove something. To prove that I was not the failure they thought I was. To prove that I could take the thing they valued most and claim it as my own. And maybe, just maybe, to make them understand what it felt like to lose everything. I scheduled a meeting with a loan officer at my bank the following week. Her name was Joyce, and she was a small woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I explained my situation, leaving out the personal details, and she walked me through the process. "You have excellent credit," she said, reviewing my application, "and your income is solid. With the savings you have, I think we can get you approved for a loan. The house is undervalued at auction, so it's actually a smart investment." "How long will approval take?" I asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3, she said. "But given your financial profile, I don't see any red flags. You should be good to go by early October." I left the bank feeling both terrified and exhilarated. This was real. This was happening. I did not tell anyone what I was planning. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not even Jacob. I told myself it was because I did not want to jinx it. But the truth was, I did not want anyone to talk me out of it. I did not want anyone to tell me I was being petty or vindictive or cruel. Because maybe I was all of those things. But I did not care anymore. My mother called again in mid-September. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message asking if I had changed my mind about helping them, saying that the bank was moving forward with the foreclosure and they were running out of options. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered, almost fragile. I deleted the message without responding. Vanessa called a few days later. I answered, curious to hear what she would say. "Naomi, what is wrong with you?" she said, skipping any pretense of politeness. "Mom and Dad are about to lose their house, and you're just going to sit there and do nothing?" "I'm not doing nothing," I said calmly. "I'm taking care of my son, just like I always have." "You're being selfish," she snapped. "This isn't about you. This is about them. They need help, and you're holding some stupid grudge because of Thanksgiving." "It's not about Thanksgiving," I said. "It's about every single time you and Mom and Dad made me and Jacob feel like we didn't matter. It's about every time you treated him like he was less than your daughters. It's about years of being ignored and dismissed and told I wasn't good enough." "Oh, please," Vanessa said. "You're so dramatic. Nobody treated you that badly. You just have a victim complex." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "You really don't see it, do you? You really think everything you did was fine." "I think you need to grow up," she said. "Mom and Dad gave you everything. They let you live at home after you got pregnant. They helped you with Jacob when you couldn't handle it. And this is how you repay them?" "They helped me?" I repeated. "Vanessa, they made me feel like I was a burden every single day. They made Jacob feel like he didn't belong, and you did the same thing. You're being ridiculous," she said. "If you don't help them, you're going to regret it." "Maybe," I said, "but I don't think so." I hung up before she could respond. The loan approval came through on October 2nd. Joyce called me with the news, congratulating me on becoming a future homeowner. I thanked her, my hands shaking as I held the phone. I had $78,000 available to me. The auction was in less than 2 weeks. I drove past the house on Maple Grove Lane the weekend before the auction. It looked the same as it always had. The chipped paint, the sagging porch, the overgrown lawn. My father's truck was in the driveway, rusted and covered in dust. My mother's flower pot sat empty on the front steps. I sat in my car across the street, watching the house, and I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no sadness, no regret. Just a cold, clear sense of purpose. This house had never been a home to me. It had been a place where I learned I was not good enough, where I learned that love was conditional, where I learned that some people would always matter more than others. But it was about to become something else. It was about to become proof that I was stronger than they ever gave me credit for. The auction was held at the county courthouse, a gray stone building downtown with tall columns and a worn marble staircase. I arrived early, wearing a simple black dress and flats, carrying a folder with all my loan documents and a cashier's check for the down payment. There were about 20 other people there, most of them investors or real estate agents looking for deals. I sat in the back row, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The auctioneer called out the address for Maple Grove Lane at 10:30. I raised my hand and bid $78,000. No one else bid. The auctioneer called it once, twice, and then banged his gavel. Sold to bidder number 17. And just like that, I owned my parents' house. The paperwork took 2 weeks to finalize. I met with Joyce again, signed what felt like 100 documents, and transferred the funds. By the end of October, the deed to the house on Maple Grove Lane was in my name. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Vanessa. I waited, letting the reality of what I had done settle into my bones. The county sent my parents an eviction notice in early November. They had 30 days to vacate the property. I knew because my mother called me, hysterical, the day she received it. "Naomi, something terrible has happened," she said, her voice breaking. "The house sold at auction. We have to leave. We have 30 days. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, keeping my voice even. "Sorry?" she repeated. "That's all you have to say? Naomi, we're going to be homeless. Your father and I have nowhere to go." "What about Vanessa?" I asked. "Can't she help you?" "She doesn't have room," my mother said. "Her house is too small. We asked, but she said it wouldn't work." I almost laughed. Vanessa's house was a 4-bedroom colonial with a finished basement. She had plenty of room. She just did not want them there. "I don't know what you want me to do," I said. "You could let us stay with you," she said, "just until we figure something out." "No," I said. "I can't do that." "Naomi, please," she begged. "We're your parents. We raised you. You can't just abandon us." "You abandoned me a long time ago," I said quietly. "You abandoned Jacob. And now you're paying for it." "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice rising. "We never abandoned you. We were always there for you." "You were there for Vanessa," I said. "You were there for her daughters. But you were never there for me or Jacob. Not in any way that mattered." "That's not true," she said, but her voice wavered. "It is true," I said, "and you know it." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I don't understand why you're being so cruel." "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm just done pretending that everything was fine. I'm done acting like you didn't hurt us. I'm done being the one who always has to forgive and forget." "So that's it?" she said. "You're just going to let us lose everything." "You already lost everything," I said. "The house is gone. It's sold at auction. There's nothing I can do about that." I hung up before she could say anything else. Vanessa called me an hour later, screaming. "How could you?" she shouted. "How could you do this to them? They're our parents, Naomi. They don't deserve this." "They made Jacob eat in the garage," I said calmly. "They treated him like garbage. They treated me like garbage. And you did too." "You're insane," she said. "You're punishing them because of one stupid dinner?" "It wasn't one dinner," I said. "It was a lifetime of being told I wasn't good enough. A lifetime of watching you get everything while I got nothing. A lifetime of being invisible." "You're so full of yourself," she said. "You think you're some kind of victim, but you're not. You're just bitter and jealous." "Maybe I am," I said. "But at least I'm not a hypocrite. At least I don't pretend to care about people I actually despise." "I don't despise you," she said, but her voice was cold. "Yes, you do," I said. "You always have. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Because I don't need you anymore. I don't need any of you." I hung up on her too. The next few weeks were tense. My mother called me every other day, begging me to reconsider, to help them find a place to stay, to give them money for a rental deposit. I ignored most of the calls. When I did answer, I kept my responses short and unemotional. Vanessa stopped calling altogether, which was a relief. My father called once, his voice gruff and uncomfortable. "Your mother says you won't help us," he said. "That's right," I said. "Why?" he asked. "Because you never helped me," I said. "Not when it mattered." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't want you to say anything," I said. "I just want you to understand what it feels like to be powerless, to have no control over your life, to feel like you don't matter." "I do matter," he said, his voice hardening. "I worked my whole life. I provided for this family." "You provided for Vanessa," I said. "You never provided for me. Not emotionally, not financially, not in any real way." "That's not true," he said. "It is true," I said. "And deep down, you know it." He hung up without saying goodbye. I felt no guilt, no sadness, just a quiet, steady resolve. In late November, I received a call from a property management company I had contacted weeks earlier. They specialized in managing rental properties, and I had hired them to handle the house on Maple Grove Lane once my parents moved out. "The property is vacant," the manager said. "Your parents moved out yesterday. We're scheduling a cleaning crew and some minor repairs, and then it'll be ready to list." "Thank you," I said. "Are you planning to rent it out or sell it?" he asked. "Rent it out," I said. "For now." "Sounds good," he said. "We'll have it ready by mid-December." I hung up and sat in my car in the clinic parking lot, staring at nothing. It was done. My parents were out. The house was mine. Jacob got into the car after school that day, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Mama, can we get pizza tonight?" he asked. "Sure, buddy," I said, smiling at him in the rearview mirror. "Are you okay?" he asked. "You look happy." "I am happy," I said, and I realized it was true. For the first time in years, I was not carrying the weight of my family's expectations. I was not trying to prove anything to anyone. I was just living my life, taking care of my son, and moving forward. And it felt incredible. But I was not done yet, because my family still did not know the truth. They still did not know who had bought the house. They still did not know that their daughter, the one they had dismissed and ignored, was the reason they were packing boxes and searching for apartments. And I was going to make sure they found out. December came fast. The house on Maple Grove Lane was cleaned, repaired, and listed for rent by the 15th. The property management company found tenants within a week, a young couple with a baby who were thrilled to find a home in a quiet neighborhood at a reasonable price. I signed the lease agreement and collected the first month's rent and deposit. It was surreal, seeing my name on the paperwork as the landlord. The house that had once represented everything I could not have was now an asset, something that belonged to me. My parents had moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, a cramped 2-bedroom in a building that smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke. Vanessa had loaned them money for the deposit, but from what I heard through a mutual acquaintance, she was not happy about it. I still had not told them the truth. I wanted to. I wanted to walk up to their door and tell them exactly who had bought their house, but I waited. I wanted the moment to be perfect. That moment came in mid-December, 2 days before Christmas. My mother called me, her voice softer than it had been in months. "Naomi, I know things have been difficult between us," she said, "but it's Christmas. Your father and I would like to see Jacob. We'd like to see you too." I was silent for a moment, considering. "Where are you living now?" I asked, even though I already knew. She gave me the address, her voice tight with embarrassment. "I'll think about it," I said. "Please," she said. "We miss him. We miss you." I hung up without promising anything. That night, I made a decision. I would go see them. I would bring Jacob, and I would tell them everything. We drove to their apartment on December 23rd. It was a gray, cold day, the kind where the sky looked heavy and oppressive. Jacob sat in the back seat, quiet and uncertain. "Are we really going to see Grandma and Grandpa?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Why?" he asked. "They don't like me." My heart broke a little. "They're going to see you differently now," I said. "I promise." The apartment building was worse in person than I had imagined. The paint was peeling, the hallways were dark, and the air smelled stale. I knocked on the door to Unit 2C, and my mother answered. She looked older than I remembered. Thinner, tired. Her hair was grayer, her face more lined. She smiled when she saw Jacob, but it was a brittle, uncertain smile. "Naomi," she said. "Jacob, come in." The apartment was small and cluttered. Boxes were still stacked against the walls, and the furniture looked out of place in the cramped space. My father sat in a worn armchair by the window, his face drawn and expressionless. "Hi, Grandpa," Jacob said quietly. My father nodded but did not say anything. We sat on the couch and my mother offered us tea. I declined. The tension in the room was suffocating. "How have you been?" my mother asked, her voice forced and cheerful. "Good," I said. "Really good, actually." "That's wonderful," she said, but her eyes were sad. Vanessa arrived a few minutes later with her daughters. She looked at me with thinly veiled hostility, and I met her gaze without flinching. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "Mom invited us," I said. She sat down across from me, her arms crossed. Chloe and Sophie ran to the back bedroom to play, and Jacob stayed by my side, his small hand gripping mine. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a few minutes. Then my mother cleared her throat. "Naomi, we wanted to talk to you," she said, "about everything that's happened." "Okay," I said. "We know you're upset with us," she said. "And maybe we didn't handle things as well as we could have. But we're family. And family forgives each other." I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no longing for her approval. Just a cold, clear understanding of who she was. "Do you know who bought your house?" I asked. She blinked, confused by the change of subject. "No, the bank wouldn't tell us. Some investor, I think." "It wasn't an investor," I said. "It was me." The room went completely silent. My mother stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she could not find words. My father sat up straighter, his face turning red. Vanessa looked at me like I had just confessed to murder. "What?" my mother finally said. "I bought your house," I said calmly. "At the auction. I own it now. I'm renting it out to a nice young couple with a baby." You did this?" my mother said, her voice rising. "You bought our house out from under us?" "I bought a foreclosed property at a public auction," I said. "You lost the house because you couldn't pay the mortgage. I had nothing to do with that." "But you could have helped us," she said, her voice breaking. "You could have given us the money to save it." "I could have," I said. "But I chose not to." "Why?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why would you do this to us?" "Because you did it to me first," I said. "You made me feel worthless my entire life. You made Jacob feel like he didn't belong. You treated us like we were nothing. And I'm done pretending that's okay." "You're a monster," Vanessa said, her voice shaking with rage. "You're cruel and vindictive, and I hope you're happy with yourself." "I am happy," I said. "For the first time in years, I'm happy, because I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your love. I don't need anything from any of you." I stood up, taking Jacob's hand. "Come on, buddy. We're leaving." Naomi, wait, my mother said, reaching for me. I stepped back. No, I'm done waiting. I'm done hoping you'll change. I'm done being your disappointment. I walked out of that apartment with Jacob by my side, and I did not look back. As we drove away, Jacob looked up at me. Mama, are you okay? I'm perfect, I said. And I meant it. The house on Maple Grove Lane was no longer theirs. It was mine. And they would have to live with that knowledge for the rest of their lives. Christmas came and went. Jacob and I spent it alone in our apartment, decorating a small tree and making cookies. He seemed lighter, happier, like some invisible weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He did not ask about my parents or Vanessa. He did not ask why we left their apartment so abruptly. He just enjoyed being 7 years old, opening his presents and watching cartoons in his pajamas. I felt lighter too. The confrontation had been difficult, but necessary. I had finally said everything I needed to say, and I had walked away on my own terms. For the first time in my life, I was not waiting for my family to validate me. I was not hoping they would change or apologize or suddenly see me as worthy of their love. I was free. The rental income from the house on Maple Grove Lane started coming in January. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to cover the mortgage payment and put a little extra in my savings each month. The property management company handled everything, from collecting rent to scheduling repairs, which meant I barely had to think about it. But I thought about it anyway. I thought about my parents living in that cramped apartment, knowing their old house was just across town, occupied by strangers. I thought about Vanessa, who had always looked down on me, now forced to acknowledge that I had done something she never could. I thought about all the years I spent feeling small and inadequate, and how that feeling was gone now, replaced by something solid and unshakable. In late January, I received a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw it was from Vanessa. "We need to talk," the message said. "Can we meet somewhere?" I stared at the message for a long time, debating whether to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, to let her stew in whatever emotions she was feeling. But another part of me was curious. I wanted to know what she would say now that the dust had settled. I replied, "Coffee shop on 4th Street, tomorrow at noon." She responded immediately, "I'll be there." The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early. It was a small place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. I ordered a latte and sat by the window, watching people walk past on the sidewalk. Vanessa arrived exactly at noon. She looked tired, her makeup not quite hiding the dark circles under her eyes. She ordered a black coffee and sat down across from me without saying hello. "Thanks for meeting me," she said stiffly. "What do you want?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "I want to understand why you did it, why you bought the house, why you hurt Mom and Dad like that." "I didn't hurt them," I said. "They hurt themselves. They couldn't pay their bills, and they lost the house. I just happened to be the one who bought it." "But you knew what it would do to them," she said. "You knew how much that house meant to them." "And they knew how much Jacob meant to me," I said. "But that didn't stop them from treating him like he was worthless." Vanessa looked down at her coffee. "That Thanksgiving thing, that was a long time ago. You really held on to that?" "It wasn't just Thanksgiving," I said, my voice rising slightly. "It was every single time they chose you over me. Every time they praised your daughters and ignored my son. Every time they made me feel like I was a failure because I didn't live up to their expectations." "I didn't know you felt that way," she said quietly. "Yes, you did," I said. "You just didn't care." She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Mom's not doing well. She cries all the time. Dad barely speaks. They feel like they've lost everything." They have lost everything, I said. And maybe that's what they needed. Maybe they needed to understand what it feels like to be on the other side. You're talking about revenge, Vanessa said. That's what this is. Revenge. Maybe, I said. But it's also justice. They treated me and Jacob terribly, and now they're paying for it. I'm not sorry about that. Vanessa shook her head. I don't understand you anymore. You used to be so... I don't know. You used to try so hard to make everyone happy. I got tired of trying, I said. I got tired of sacrificing myself for people who didn't appreciate it. So I stopped. And now I'm living my life for me and Jacob. Not for them, not for you, for us. So that's it? She asked. You're just done with all of us? Yes, I said simply. I am. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something shifting in her eyes. Maybe it was understanding. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was both. I don't think I can forgive you for this, she said. I don't need you to, I said. I don't need anything from you. She stood up, grabbing her coffee. I hope you're happy, Naomi. I hope it was worth it. It was, I said. Every single bit of it. She walked out without another word, and I watched her go. I felt no sadness, no regret, just a quiet sense of finality. That chapter of my life was over. My family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, were gone. And I was okay with that. Better than okay. I was finally, truly free. Spring arrived slowly in Louisville, bringing warmer air and blooming trees. Jacob finished second grade with excellent marks, and his teacher told me he was one of the most creative students she had ever taught. He was thriving, and that was all that mattered to me. Work continued to go well. I received another raise in March, along with a bonus for exceeding performance targets. My supervisor mentioned that I was being considered for a management position that would open up later in the year. I was building a career, a real career, not just a job to pay the bills. The rental property continued to generate steady income. The tenants were respectful and paid on time, and the property management company reported no issues. I rarely thought about the house itself anymore. It was just an investment, a piece of my financial portfolio. But my family could not let it go. In April, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was cooking dinner when I heard the knock on the door. When I opened it and saw her standing there, I almost closed it again. Naomi, please, she said quickly. I just want to talk. How did you get my address? I asked. I've always had it, she said. You gave it to me years ago, and I had forgotten about that. I stepped aside reluctantly, letting her in but not offering her a seat. She stood in the middle of my small living room, looking around at the framed pictures of Jacob, the artwork he had made, the cozy furniture I had carefully chosen. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying recently. Your place is nice, she said. Thank you, I said. What do you want? I want to apologize, she said. For everything. For the way we treated you and Jacob, for not appreciating you, for making you feel like you didn't matter. I crossed my arms. Okay, you apologized. Is that all? I mean it, she said, her voice cracking. I've had a lot of time to think about things, about how we treated you. And you were right. We were wrong. I know I was right, I said. I've known that for years. But you're only apologizing now because I have something you want. That's not true, she said. Yes, it is, I said. If I hadn't bought the house, if I was still the struggling single mother working at a clinic, you wouldn't be here. You'd still be ignoring me and treating Jacob like he was invisible. She looked down at her hands. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want you to say anything, I said. I want you to leave. Naomi, please, she said, tears streaming down her face. We're family. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It used to, I said. But not anymore. You made sure of that. Can't we start over? She asked. Can't we try to fix this? No, I said. Because I don't want to fix it. I'm happy with my life the way it is. Jacob is happy. We don't need you. But I need you, she said, her voice breaking. You should have thought about that before you made my son eat in the garage, I said coldly. You should have thought about that before you spent years making me feel worthless. She sobbed openly now, her shoulders shaking. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, no desire to comfort her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are, I said. But it doesn't change anything. You can't undo what you did, and I can't forgive it. So you're just going to keep the house? She asked. You're just going to keep punishing us? I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm living my life. The house is mine. It's an investment. What I do with it has nothing to do with you. But it does, she said. It has everything to do with us. You bought it to hurt us. I bought it because it was a good deal, I said. And because I could. Because I worked hard and saved money and built a life for myself and my son. If that hurts you, that's not my problem. She stared at me, her face pale. I don't even recognize you anymore. Good, I said. Because the person you knew was miserable. She spent her whole life trying to earn love from people who didn't deserve her. I'm not that person anymore. I see that, she said quietly. You need to leave now, I said, walking to the door and opening it. She hesitated, like she wanted to say something else, but then she just nodded and walked out. I closed the door behind her and locked it. Jacob came out of his room a few minutes later. Was that Grandma? He asked. Yes, I said. What did she want? She wanted to apologize, I said. Did you forgive her? He asked. I knelt down so I was eye level with him. No, buddy, I didn't. Why not? Because some things can't be fixed with just an apology, I said. And because we're doing just fine without her. He nodded slowly, processing this. Then he hugged me. I love you, Mama. I love you too, I said, holding him tight. That was the last time my mother came to my apartment. That was the last time any of them tried to reach out. And I was perfectly okay with that. By summer, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Jacob turned 8 in June, and we celebrated with a small party at a local park. He invited friends from school, and we played games and ate cake under the shade of big oak trees. Watching him laugh and run around with other kids, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. He was happy. He was loved. He was exactly where he needed to be. I never heard from my parents again after my mother's visit. Vanessa sent me one final text in July, saying that our father had been hospitalized for pneumonia but was recovering. She did not ask me to visit. She did not ask me to call. She just informed me, like I was a distant acquaintance who deserved to know. I did not respond. In August, the management company called to tell me the tenants wanted to renew their lease for another year. I agreed immediately. The house was a steady source of income, and I had no plans to sell it anytime soon. One afternoon in late August, I drove past Maple Grove Lane on my way home from work. I slowed down as I passed the house, looking at it with fresh eyes. The new tenants had planted flowers in the front yard, and the porch had been repainted. It looked better than it ever had when my parents lived there. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The house was no longer a symbol of everything I could not have. It was proof of everything I had achieved. I pulled over and sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at the house. I thought about the little girl I used to be, the one who played in that yard and dreamed of being loved by her family. I thought about the young mother I had been, struggling to survive while my family looked down on me. I thought about the woman I was now, strong and independent and unafraid. That journey had been hard. It had been painful. But it had also been necessary. I started the car and drove home, leaving the house behind me. Jacob was waiting for me when I got home, his face lit up with excitement. "Mama, guess what? I got accepted into the advanced art program at school." "That's amazing, buddy," I said, pulling him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "The teacher said I have real talent," he said. "She said I could be an artist when I grow up if I keep working hard." "You can be anything you want to be," I said. "I believe in you." He grinned. "Thanks, Mama. You're the best." That night, after Jacob went to bed, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea, looking out at the city lights. I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The auction, the confrontation, the rental income, the freedom. I thought about my parents, living in that small apartment, struggling to make ends meet. I thought about Vanessa, who had always believed she was better than me, now forced to reckon with the fact that I had succeeded where she expected me to fail. I thought about the house on Maple Grove Lane, the house that was supposed to represent their legacy, now legally mine. And I thought about Jacob, safe and happy and loved. Had I been cruel? Maybe. Had I been vindictive? Possibly. But I had also been honest. I had stopped pretending that everything was fine. I had stopped accepting cruelty in the name of family. I had taken control of my life and built something real. And I was not sorry for any of it. My parents struggled for months after losing the house. My father's health declined, and my mother worked part-time at a grocery store to help make ends meet. Vanessa stopped helping them financially after a few months, claiming she had her own bills to worry about. They moved to an even smaller apartment in a worse part of town, and from what I heard through a former neighbor, they barely spoke to each other anymore. The loss of the house had broken something fundamental between them, and they never recovered. They had built their entire identity around that property, and without it, they had nothing left to hold on to. Vanessa's marriage fell apart the following year, when her husband left her for someone else. She had to sell her house and move into a rental with her daughters. She tried to reach out to me once, asking if I would loan her money, but I never responded. She learned what it felt like to be ignored, to be dismissed, to be treated like she did not matter. As for me, I kept moving forward. Jacob thrived in school and in life. I was promoted to manager at work, and eventually, I bought a small house for us in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. The rental property on Maple Grove Lane continued to generate income, a steady reminder of where I came from and how far I had traveled. Looking back on that Thanksgiving night when my son ate leftovers in the garage, I realized it was not the end of something. It was the beginning. It was the moment I stopped accepting less than I deserved. It was the moment I decided to fight for myself and for Jacob, no matter the cost. Revenge is a complicated thing, but sometimes it is also justice. And sometimes justice is the only path to peace.